Hello, hello. I think I know why everybody is here in chat tonight. Welcome everyone. I know just to go, my audience is waiting. Hello everybody. So for tonight I prepared what I think is going to be the start of, well, I hope, a successful series. And this series is aimed towards people rated between 1200 and mostly 1800. If you're lower rated than 1200, I encourage you to work a bit on your tactical pattern recognition and maybe watch some higher level games before you even pick an opening repertoire. If you are above 1800, some of the material that I'm going to present tonight might seem a bit overly simplistic, and the lines are not going to be complex enough for you to like, I suppose. Are certified Hood classics considered as classical pieces? You're gonna have to give an example in the chat before I even understand what you mean. The only classical Hood that I can prepare for tonight is this classical Hood. Thanks for paying your daily tax, guys. Hello Dorina, hello to Kincho, hello to DragonB70, and everybody else who is probably still lurking in the shadows. Thanks for paying your daily taxes. Alright, so I'm not going to beat around the bush for too long tonight. Let me make sure that I have this prepared. Okay, so we are going to start with one e4, and I'm going to recommend some very solid openings with white. So basically, we start the repertoire with one e4, and then we look at some of my recommendations against the main systems that black can throw at you. So for example, you should see on the screen against one e5, I recommend the Vienna game, starting with knight c3 on the second move. Against the Sicilian, I recommend that we play the closed Sicilian. Then against the Caro-Kann, I recommend the exchange. Against the French, I believe the Tarrasch is a great option. And against Pirts or modern setups, I recommend that we fianchetto our light squared bishop on g2 as well. Against the Scandinavian and the Alekhine, I think it's way too easy to obtain an advantage, so I'm not going to insist too much on those openings or any of the weirder looking openings. So let's get started with 1e5. So this is one of the main ways for black to respond to 1 to e4. Of course, here the main move is that we start with knight f3 and just put pressure on this pawn on e5. But for the intended audience tonight, I'm not going to recommend that we play this move. This move leads to a lot of complicated theoretical openings. I recommend that we play knight to c3. And you might ask, okay, what's the reason? Why do we play knight c3? It doesn't do anything, it's not attacking the pawn. It really doesn't contain any venom, any threat. Hello to GM Lightning as well. Shout out to let me give some shout outs. Or if we have mods. Mods, can we shout out DragonB70? Can we shout out Kincho and also GM Lightning? Hope I didn't miss anybody. Okay, also Dorina. Dorina is also here with us in the chat. So I recommend knight c3 for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's kind of offbeat, and your opponent is usually not going to be super well prepared. Akjet can confirm in the chat, he hates facing this opening. He hates facing the Vienna. So if you want a way to frustrate him, not beat him, he's still very strong, he might outplay you. But if you want to frustrate Akjet, you should play the Vienna against him. So what's the purpose of this move? Well, we're developing knights before bishops, we're reinforcing the e4 pawn, and we are controlling the d5 square as well. So here there are two ways for black to respond. The most principled one is to play knight to f6, and here I recommend that we play the move g3. Normally in classical OTB games, I have favored the move f4, but this is a bit too sharp and it's not solid enough. So if black responds here with d5, the lines get a bit complicated, a bit messy, the pawn structure can get ruined very fast. So here I recommend that we just fianchetto the light squared bishop. And against any move, basically, against any move not d5, so something like bishop to c5, we're just going to continue with the fianchetto, and then let's say black castles. Thank you so much for the follow. Hello to G in the bottle as well. Yeah, South Parks, recommending the Vienna. I think this is good. So against any approach by black here, we normally want to play knight g2 e2. Then we're gonna go for short castles. And let's say, I don't know, d6. Maybe we just go h3. We want to prevent this bishop from pinning our knight against the queen. So the plan here is very simple. We're gonna make the moves h3, king to h2, pawn to d3. Either develop the bishop to g5 or keep it on c1 and then push f4. So the scheme of play is very simple here. Let's look at some other more critical move. After g3, d5 is a good way for black to strike in the center. Now we have to take this pawn. We cannot allow this pawn to come to d4 with tempo and disrupt our piece coordination. So we do have to take. Then after knight takes, bishop g2. Normally they take on c3, and here my question to chat is, how are you going to capture back on c3? Are we going to take back with the b pawn, or are we going to take back with the d pawn? Responses in chat, please. So the new follower here was Aka Nikolai. Hello, Nikolai. Yeah, study line saying b takes c3. Let's wait for some other. Okay, Mihai is also saying b. Anybody who wants to take with the d pawn? Ratchet Loader saying the d pawn. Just to go saying B, Davo saying D. Alright, so here we have some GM argues that D takes C3 is a draw. Well, again, we're playing with the white pieces. We don't want to play for a draw. This position, I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, we kind of ruined our pawn structure. The endgame is very good for black. Black still has the bishop pair. We lost our castling rights. So yeah, maybe not ideal to take with the d pawn. The move that we have to play here is b takes c3, capturing towards the center. And then after something like bishop to d6, knight to f3. In this line, it's okay to bring the knight out to f3, because even if they pin it with bishop g4, that's not dangerous. We can always break the pin with h3. We can even move the queen away. We could even move the queen away to the e file after castling. So let's give some sample line here. Castles, castles, then knight to c6, and now rook to b1 is a cool move to make. Basically kind of stopping black from developing the bishop too easily to g4, because we're just gonna grab the juicer. So let's say rook to b8, and now d4 finally. And this is a pretty long theoretical line, so we're not going to get too deeply into it. All I have to tell you is that white is more than fine here. White, in fact, has won all the games at the master level from this position. And it's actually kind of simple to see why. First, we're going to attack this. And then we're going to go here. And basically, two of the pieces are hanging for black already. This bishop is hanging, this bishop is hanging. So, in fact, Magnus Carlsen lost to Elena Sedina in 2003 in this particular line. No Italian. No, we're not going to play any Italian against 1e5. I recommend the Vienna. So let's recap. Against d5 we have to take, and we have to recapture with the b pawn on c3 after takes, bishop g2, and now knight takes. So that's all you have to remember. Then we can develop the knight to f3, castle short, eventually push d4 and fight for the center. Against anything else, let's say something passive, you might see your opponents play something like bishop e7. Doesn't make any sense, it's kind of a passive move, but okay, some players might play like this. We continue with our normal plan. Our normal plan, remember, is knights on c3 and e2, bishop fianchetto on g2, short castles, pawn to h3, king to h2, and then start pushing with f4. And our plan is either to close the king side by pushing f5, or simply to take on e5 and open the f-file for the rook. Hello to Florine, hello to Tinko Binko. Have you heard of Brilliant? Nope, I have never heard of Brilliant. I have no idea what that is. So yeah, I mean, after any sequence of normal moves, even if black plays a bit passively in the center, we might even be able to strike back with d4 right away. Just play d4 in one go. We don't even have to go for d3 or short castles. We can just fight for the center. So remember this scheme of development, very important in the Vienna. Knight on c3, knight on e2, bishop on g2, short castles, and then ram the f juicer up the board. In the ideal case scenario, we are going to have a really nice attack with the pawns. It's like h3, g4, g5, and just smash black on the king side. So this is the Vienna. Also, against knight to c6, the same setup makes perfect sense. We are not going to play the bishop out to c4, which is the so-called Frankenstein-Dracula attack. So we don't want to play like this. We want to play very conservatively. Let's say g3, bishop c5, bishop g2. And all of a sudden, we're kind of transposing. I mean, more often than not, here we're going to transpose. We might even have the positional threat of knight to a4 in some lines. Let's say after d6. After d6, we're going to play knight to a4. And this is very important because we're going to hunt down the bishop. So this bishop, if it goes here, we're just going to chop it off. If it goes here, we're just going to hunt the bishop until we eventually capture it. And if the bishop goes to d4, we are going to treat the bishop in the same way, but it's probably even better to start with knight to e2. Is everything going to be in one stream? Absolutely, Tinko Binko. We are here to go through the entire repertoire, but again, this is aimed towards people between 1200 and 1800. If you're higher rated than this, of course, some of the lines that I give are going to appear simplistic. If you're lower rated than this, please do insist on tactics and watch higher level games to kind of get a feel for where the pieces should go. Tralafite is here with us, paying the daily tax as well. Polish Warrior, thank you for being with us tonight as well. Alright, so again, same idea. We can kind of play this almost on autopilot, although I don't recommend that you play moves on autopilot. You should always look at what your opponent is doing. But we are going to go for the same scheme of development. Again, h3 is important to prevent this bishop from coming over to g4. So here, king to h2, short castles. Now we can probably start, let's start by playing d3 to open up the bishop and only then push f4 in the center. Pawn Wander is here. Hey Pawn Wander, how's it going? Yeah, so I think this position is really not explored at even the highest levels of chess. It just gives you a really nice solid position, two knights reinforcing each other, the bishop on g2 defending the king's side, and you really have a nice plan of pushing f4. And if the bishop is on e6, f5 comes with tempo, that's nice. And then you just start pushing the other juicers. f4, f5, g4, g5, and just attack on the king's side. Okay, so that's pretty much all about the Vienna. You just have to understand where to put the pieces and then what the main plans are. If black castles long, maybe this is one last parenthesis that I'm going to make. If black castles long in the Vienna, let's just make some normal looking moves. I don't know, knight f6, g3, bishop c5, bam. Here, here. Let's say they just kind of delay all of this. Let's say they play something aggressive like h5. How should we respond to this? Well, they want to go h4 and open the h file and attack you. So the way I would respond to this personally is probably with the move h4 rather than h3. So just kind of waste the tempo on this. And now I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to attack on the queen's side. How do we do this? The move a3 is very important in these structures. We basically want to discourage black from castling long, because b4 comes with tempo, then b5 comes with tempo, and in the future we might want to exchange the dark squared bishops, capture with the f-pawn, and install a knight on d5. The Vienna Gambit is too dubious. Yeah, the Vienna Gambit I'm not going to recommend because it gets a bit too spicy for my taste even. So remember this key move. Remember to stop h5 with h4 in most of these lines, and it's always good to have the bishop open towards g5, so g5 cannot come too easily. And then remember the key idea of a3, b4, b5, bishop e3. So yeah, you should not be concerned when black is castling long here. Okay, that's it for the Vienna. Against the Sicilian, I recommend the closed Sicilian. And that is for two reasons. One, if you're still an improving player, you probably don't want to learn all the main lines. There are so many main lines in the Sicilian. Only in the d6 Sicilian, black can already choose from a number of different setups. So black can choose from the classical Sicilian, black can go for the Najdorf, for the dragon, and even other Sicilians. Then in the e6 lines, black normally goes for the Khan, the Taimanov, or the pin variation, or the four knights. And in the knight c6 line, black can go for the Sveshnikov, the accelerated dragon, or the Kalashnikov, or even the Löwenthal. So this is absolutely insane, and I do not recommend, as if you're an improving player, I do not recommend that you spend all your time studying these main lines. So I recommend the closed Sicilian, which leads to a very nice position. Normally, black will respond with knight to c6, and here the move that I recommend is g3. I have to take a sip, GM Lightning. It's a little fast. Are you going to post it in video afterwards? Well, you can always watch the VOD on my Twitch channel. If something is unclear, you can always watch it in the VOD, and I hope to post this video archive on my YouTube channel as well. Sorry for asking, is this going to be replayable? Yeah, it's going to be replayable for at least 14 days on my Twitch channel after the end of the stream tonight. Laura Unuk is already IM. Yes, I mean, she reached all the requirements for IM. She reached 2400 in rating. She has all 3 norms. She just needs to be formally accepted by FIDE. Okay, so you will notice that I recommend the fianchetto on the king side in many of these lines. And here we start with the move g3. And here black can choose from a number of different options. All options are valid. More often than not, black is going to imitate our setup by going for the kingside fianchetto. And of course, if we play g3, we are going to have to play bishop g2 on the next move. Why else did we play g3 if not to fianchetto the bishop? Black is going to imitate us. And now, here is the setup that I recommend. The setup that I recommend is based on the moves d3, pawn to f4, and then knight to f3. So I'm not going to recommend the so-called chameleon Sicilian. I am not going to recommend that we go for the same setup as in the Vienna with knight g2. This is not what we want in the closed Sicilian. We want to go for a bit more, like more space in the center, a bit more aggressive, and only then, after we move the f-pawn, we develop the knight to f3. Do you like football, Vlad? Not my favorite sport. I follow Champions League and the World Cup, but football is not my favorite team sport. I prefer handball or basketball, but I do like football. And of course here we're talking about like European football, as in our American friends call it soccer, but we call it football here. Okay, so we start with d3 to reinforce the center. What to do against knight d4 then? Knight d4? Well, knight d4 is a premature. Black should really continue with developing their pieces first before moving the same knight twice in the opening. So knight d4 should never concern you. You just develop your pieces normally, you castle, you just ignore it. So d3, main move here is usually d6 or e6. Let's say d6. And now, I know if you look in the database, you might ask me, why not bishop to e3, intending queen d2, long castles, and some attack based on this. I don't find this system as good. I find the system that I recommend with f4, which was favored by Boris Spassky, one of the former world champions. I find the system with f4 more straightforward, and just more, I like to grab more space in the center. So here the main line goes e6, and now knight to f3. You see the idea behind playing the pawn up. It's nice to play the pawn up to f4, so then we can develop the knight right behind the f-pawn. This really is a very solid system indeed. And normally black here goes for the move knight g to e7, trying to prevent us from pushing f5 anytime soon. Very important, don't be scared of castling short once you moved g3 and f4. You should not be scared of castling short because you have this really nice bishop protecting your king side. You have the strong knight on f3, and the bishop on the dark squares can still protect you on this diagonal. So do not be scared. Thank you so much for the follow, guys. So do not be scared of castling short. In fact, this rook is going to be very strong on the f-file if we ever manage to open it. So here the main line goes. The main line goes short castles, and here the move, bishop to e3. So look at how harmonious our development is. We have 2 pawns in the center of the board. We have another pawn on f4 controlling a bunch of dark squares in the center. And our knights are beautifully developed to both c3 and f3, and the bishops are very strong on g2 and on e3. So this is such a nice setup to play with. Then after knight to d4, you can play a number of different moves. Here, my preference is for the strange looking move, bishop to f2. This is a bit strange, but it has one purpose. The purpose is to open the e-file. So we want to bring the rook over to e1 and anticipate the e-file opening sooner or later. So basically the bishop on e3 is in the way. We just want to put it on f2. And the next few moves are going to involve something like queen to d2, rook to e1, rook to d1, and just play in the center of the board. There's another pawn sacrifice line. There's a pawn sacrifice that starts after e5, but I do not recommend that you play this. It gets pretty messy. The knight can attack your bishop. Your pawn on e5 is going to be lost. This gets quite complicated pretty fast. Hello, Fruji! Hello, hello! Hello to our Magyar tiger! Yeah, so another line here can start with the move b6. b6 is also an option, but I kind of recommend the same setup. So I am still going to recommend bishop to f2, and then after bishop to b7, queen is coming out to d2. So look at how solid the position is, guys. We have no weaknesses. Look at this. 8 pawns, beautifully chained together. We have a bunch of space in the center. Our knights are so nice, bishops so nice. Our rooks are coming to the center of the board. This is really a strong setup, but of course there are many ways for black to play this as well. So I'm not saying this leads to an advantage. What should be our plan here? So what is our plan? Our plan is to slowly build up and start moving the pawns up the board. However, if black counters us in the center with a move like d5, then we should be careful about not advancing too fast and pushing the pawns too much forward. So we have to stay flexible. This is why the moves queen to d2, rook to d1, and rook to e1 are helpful. We're playing in the center of the board and fighting for the control here. Right. Vlad is getting famous. Yeah, I'm getting super famous, right? I am so famous. Let's look at some other setups. So what if after g3, black declines to fianchetto? What if black says, I'm not going to fianchetto. Fianchetto is for wimps. I'm just going to play normal Sicilian move like e6. Well, we still go for the fianchetto. And what if they go for knight to f6 here? We don't care. We are just going to go ahead with our plan. We can even start with f4 here. f4 can be a bit aggressive, right? So we're already kind of positionally threatening e5 with tempo. So normally they have to play d6. Now we can just continue the development. Knight to f3, let's say bishop to e7, short castles, and finally, we do want to give more protection to the central pawn on e4. Let me catch up with the chat for a second. Getting famous. Nah, he's already famous. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Isaac. I appreciate that. Guys, make sure to follow GM Lightning. He's a fellow streamer. Dragon B70, Sefru, Totkincho, WFM Dorina. We have a bunch of streamers here in the chat. All of them worthy follow. Okay, so what is the plan here? Well, we kind of want to put the pieces in the same way, but notice we cannot bring the bishop to e3 right away, because the knight on f6 can jump to g4. So here normally black will play rook to b8, trying to push the b pawn. So here we have to start with h3. We have to secure. So we want to secure the... Dorina is my daughter. Yeah, I know you adopted her in Bullet. Congratulations. We want to secure the e3 square for the bishop, and therefore this move h3 is important to restrict the knight. I know, Dragon. Of course I know everything. So after h3, black will normally go for b5, and here we can even go for the attack. So this knight on f6 is very inviting. Imagine the knight on f6 is speaking to the g-pawn, and they're just chatting very casually. And the knight is saying, hey, I have a party over here on the king side. Would you like to attend? And the g-pawn says, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to come all the way to g5. Of course I'm going to accept the invitation. So notice that the knight on f6 can act as a nice target for Gary the g-pawn. Gary the g-pawn likes to advance and join the party. So this is one drawback of the system with knight f6, bishop e7. The pieces for black can become misplaced quite fast. So let's say b4. Thanks for the follows, guys. b4, knight to e2, and I don't even know, something like d5. We're just going to react all the time in the closed Sicilian. We want to react by closing the center. So if the opponent wants to open the center, the name of the opening should give you a hint. It's the closed Sicilian. What do we do in the center? We close it. So this is how the game will go. And now this horsey from e2 is going to find a really nice home on h5. And this opening really resembles the King's Indian attack in some sense. We want to gravitate all our pieces. Imagine that we draw an imaginary rectangle here. Let me draw it with 4 colors, so it's fancy as hell. So on this flank, on the king's side, we want to bring all our pieces into the attack. Meanwhile, what is black doing? Well, black has a bunch of pieces on the queen side. But their king's defense is not so strong right now. Without the knight on f6, the defense is really not as good anymore. D pawn is Dorina, F is Frugi. Lol. Yeah, that's a good one actually, Dragon. How about the D pawn being Dragon? They have no V pawn, which is very sad, because that would be the Vlad pawn. Oh well. Yeah, so remember to always close the center. If your opponent wants to open up, just close it down and attack him on the flank. So yeah, I'm not going to go too deeply into the variations here, but just know that you can always transfer the knight to g3 after making room with the g pawn. You don't want to push g5 too early though. If you push g5 too early, what's going to happen is the enemy knight is going to land on h5, and that's really not good for you. First, you want to bring the knight over to g3, so then when you push g5, it's not possible for them to come over to h5. Why is that? Well, you just damaged your pawn structure, presumably. So let's just show a sample line. Let's show how that could work. I'm just going to make random moves. Let's say a5, knight to g3, bishop b7, and now, well, first of all, if they come to h5, they just blunder a piece for free. So let's say on the previous move, let's say they make a move like g6. So now after g5, this would be a terrible blunder. This would be a losing move, in fact. How do we punish them? How do we punish black for ruining the pawn structure like this? We exchange the knight. Now we bring the other horsey to h4, and the queen is ready to take on h5. So this position should be completely winning. Let's enable the engine just for a split second here. The engine evaluation in this position, and I know you cannot see this on the screen, it's plus 2.7. So this is absolutely game over. G-pawn can be you, Mr. Gita. No, I like Gary. Gary the G-pawn sounds much better. A chilly comment, thanks for the follow earlier. Okay, so this is the main plan in the closed Sicilian. We want to put the knights over to c3 and f3. We want to bring the pawns out to e4, f4, d3, g3. We want to fianchetto the light squared bishop and castle short. So once more, I'm not going to go too deeply into the lines. We want to close the center. If black wants to open up, we want to close the center and start pushing. Start pushing the pawns on the flank. Oh, I'm getting a bunch of followers. Nice, guys. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thanks so much for the support, everybody. We have 36 viewers. Tinko the T-pawn fell out of the world. Yes, sadly the notation stops at H, at Harry the H-pawn. Okay, so let's go back. Not gonna talk too much about other variations of the Sicilian. Just know that this is the main setup that we're aiming for. We want to go for d3, f4, knight f3, short castles. And of course, you can always rewatch this video at your own leisure after the broadcast is ended, and I'm going to upload this on my YouTube as well. That is true, guys. We have a YouTube. I also have Twitter and Instagram, but I don't use them as much. Of course, feel free to follow me on both Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, but I guess YouTube would be the most interesting of those three platforms for you to follow me on. Okay, so what's the next one here? The next one that we're going to tackle is Jersey Fox. Thank you so much for contributing 300 points to the next GeoGuessr stream. So the next opening that we're going to talk about tonight is the Caro-Kann, which starts with c6. Here, I'm going to recommend that we play... Last video was 8 months ago. Yes, Dragon, I kind of quit streaming for a while there. So I haven't been so active, but I promise you, regular videos are going back up on YouTube very soon. Just give me some time here. We're going to play Bobby Fischer's special. Against the Caro-Kann, I'm going to recommend a very solid approach. I'm going to recommend that we define the pawn structure in the middle of the board right away. And here, of course, black is going to take with a pawn. If your opponent takes with a queen, you're just going to smile. You're just going to laugh in his face and be like, bro, do you even chess? Do you even chess? There's no point in capturing with a queen unless you want to transpose to the Scandinavian. But if you want to play a Scandinavian, why did you start with c6 in the first place? Why did you not start with d5? So pretty much nobody is ever going to play queen takes d5. Everybody is going to recapture with the c pawn. And now the main move that I'm going to recommend is bishop to d3. I don't want to play the Panov Botvinnik attack. This attack is really not the strongest in the world, and plus it leaves you with a very passive isolated queen spawn on d4 in some lines. So I am going to recommend that we keep the pawn structure intact. Therefore, we're going to start with bishop to d3. This is a strong diagonal. This is a strong attacking diagonal, and it's also preventing the development of the black bishop to f5. So it kind of does two things at once. It develops your piece, and it also controls important squares on this diagonal. Very five-head play indeed. Normally black will go for knight to c6, and now your pawn on d4 is attacked. Pawns are good at protecting other pawns. I do not recommend that you play knight to f3 here. Knight to f3 might look natural, but after bishop to g4 and c3, you just don't seem to enjoy this position too much with white. I like to start with pawn to c3, because I know my pawn belongs on c3 in these structures. I don't know if my knight from g1 wants to go to f3 or to e2. So just trying to retain as much flexibility as possible in the center of the board. I am 100% sure my pawn from c2 needs to be on c3 though. So therefore, let's be the most flexible. Let's protect the pawn with another pawn. Here, knight to f6 is a cool move. And now we go bishop f4. We develop bishops before knights. This is one characteristic of this opening that's maybe a bit strange to you. We actually start by developing the bishops, and only then we see where to put the knights. So bishop to f4 here is actually the main move. Once more, preventing queen c7, preventing rook b8, and getting ready to retreat the bishop to g3 in case it's attacked. The main move for black here is to develop with tempo. And surprisingly, we do not play knight to f3. We do not play knight to f3 here, guys. We play queen out to b3. This is a nice move because we're reacting to an attack with a counter attack. It's always nice if you can react to a tempo move by your opponent by regaining this tempo. So here we're just regaining the tempo. Queen b3 is attacking this weak pawn on b7. Just using the consequence that now the bishop has left c8. What about e5? e5 here? e5 here doesn't seem possible. e5 here we just take. I would even take with the bishop probably. We just take and that's a free juicer. This is not enough compensation. This cannot be enough compensation. We simply play knight to f3. We just castle, bring the rook to e1. White should be winning. So queen to b3. Now the main move, surprisingly, is not queen to d7. Let me show you a funny trap. I'm going to show you a funny trap in the queen d7 line. Queen d7. First, we want to bring this knight out to d2 to reinforce its brother. We don't want to ruin our pawn structure by playing knight to f3, because then they can just take, right? They can just take, our pawns are ruined, our king side structure is not so good. So we start with knight d2. Now let's say e6, knight gf3, and... well, I'm gonna make some random moves here. Let's say takes, takes, and now some tempo losing move like h6. This is a funny line I have caught. Alright, Tico Binko, thanks for stopping by. I have caught many players in Bullet falling for this trick. Basically, you play knight e5, attacking the queen and the knight. They take, you take back with a pawn, and now there's an accident because when they go knight to h5, we trapped your queen. So this is a very funny line. I have played this maybe a few times in Bullet and caught at least 5 players, unsuspecting opponents, and they lost the queen like this. So this is why in practice the move queen to c8 is preferred. Now when the knight lands on e5, it's not going to attack the queen anymore. We still have to start with the move knight to d2. Same idea, reinforce the knight on f3 with its brother. And just knight gf3, and look at the position. Look at how strong this position is. Just look at the development. All the pieces are developed. Both bishops are on good diagonals. This bishop aiming towards h7. This bishop going to be safely perched on g3. Two knights reinforcing each other like brothers do. This rook ready to come over to e1, and this rook ready to swing over to c1. So I think this gets really nice for white in the middle game. You have to use the pawn chain here, right? Your pawn chain is looking towards the king side. So you should try to play more towards the king side. Yeah, this is the 9th symphony. That's absolutely right. We got the Ninth Symphony playing in the background by Beethoven. So we want to make use of the outpost on e5 for the horsey. How do we do this? Let's say after short castles, rook f to e1, something like bishop to h5. Now finally knight to e5. So the knight jumps up to e5, the other knight can come over to f3, and this queen could swing over to c2 and put pressure on h7. Let's say knight takes. This could be a move. Knight takes, and now very careful. We don't want to ruin our pawn structure in the center of the board. We don't want to change the pawn structure. We don't want to take with the d pawn. Taking with the d pawn is not necessarily the best idea. We want to recapture with a piece. This is a very strong square for us, and it's good to recapture with a piece. So after bishop g6, here we're gonna have to take, because there's really no good way to retain the bishop on this diagonal. No way to keep the bishop on this diagonal, and we don't want to give the diagonal up. We don't want to go back to f1. Hello, Real Animaster. And GM Lightning, hope to see you on a future stream as well. Take care, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Shout out to GM Lightning. So here we're just going to take the trade. Now h takes g6, and look at the position. We are not winning, but we have a completely playable position, and we have a nice idea of going for a rook lift. So our attacking plan might involve moves like queen back to d1, rook to e3, rook to h3, and all of a sudden this knight can go to f3, then to g5, and trouble could be brewing for the black king. I mean, look at the h-file. The h-file is open. I would definitely take this position with the white pieces. But again, black has some plans as well. Black has the plan of pushing a6, b5, and then, well, rook b8 is not possible. But eventually they want to push b4 and create a weakness on c3. Just look at the position though. Look at how nice the pieces are coming out. How fluid this is. You will never have problems against the Carl Khan if you play this type of system. Let's look at another line. What if black plays queen to c7, delaying or preventing your bishop's development to f4? What do? Do you panic? Nope, you don't panic. If they deny your development to f4, you react with the same method. You basically tell the bishop on c8, yeah? You think you can stop me from coming to f4, huh? Well, guess what? I'm gonna stop you from developing altogether. You can't come to f5 because I have a bishop. You can't come to g4 because I have a queen. But you might want to come to g4 after I play knight to f3. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to prevent you from doing that now or in the future. So we play h3. Weird looking move, I know. Seems like we're not developing a piece. Seems like we're just making a flank pawn move. But it's actually helpful because after knight to f6, we want to go knight to f3. And now you see the benefit. Now you see the benefit of h3. Black cannot develop to g4. Black doesn't really have good squares for this bishop. So this bishop is going to have to stay on c8 for the time being, or go to d7, which is not so active. Normally black goes for the move g6 here. We're going to castle. And now, finally, they're going to go for something like bishop f5. And you might ask, okay, but what's the point of this? Why can't we just take? Problem with taking here is black scores pretty well in this position because we opened the g file for them to attack us on. So Zilot is asking, instead of knight c6, isn't the best move for black bishop f5, same as in the advanced or such? No, it's usually if they play bishop to f5 early, you can counterattack. You can counterattack with the move queen to b3. So bishop to f5 is not necessarily the best in the exchange Caro-Kann for black. Early development of the bishop is generally not ideal. HSB, thanks for redeeming the daily tax. So in this line, I suggest that we just continue with our development and we do not take. It might look tempting. Black is gonna castle long, bring the rook to g8 and start attacking you. This is not very comfortable to play. So I do recommend that we bring the rook over to the I guess it's semi-open file, yeah? Half-open file on e1. Black will normally trade. That was the entire point. That was the entire point of playing g6, bishop f5. Trade this piece. Continue the development. And again, we have nice and easy development. I would recommend that we play bishop g5, bishop h4. Oops. Bishop g5, bishop h4, bishop to g3. And we finally take control of this diagonal. Very nice maneuver to be aware of. I don't like playing knight bd2 because this bishop, I don't think it has such a great prospect from c1 anymore. So this is the move that I recommend here. Bishop g5, castles, and only now knight b to d2. And after e6, probably just recommend bishop to h4. This seems solid enough. We want to bring the rook over to c1. Hello, Real Animaster, and hello to Nazari. Can I call you Nazari? I hope that's okay. Yeah, so this is another line in the Caro-Kann. But basically you see how it goes, yeah? We bring the bishop out to d3, we reinforce the d4 pawn, oops. We reinforce the d4 pawn with c3. Your name is Moin. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Moin? Moin? I have no idea how to pronounce it, so please help me out in the chat. So you see the idea, yeah? You bring the bishop out to d3, you put the pawn on c3, knight is going to come to f3, we're going to castle short, rook is coming to e1, the other knight is coming to d2, and this bishop really wants to go to f4, like in the London. But, of course, in this line with queen c7, it's not possible. Let's show one more line. Let's show the line starting with g6 right away. On g6, we go for the same idea. Bishop f4, and now, this is an interesting line. There's the move knight to h6. This move exists. Basically, black is intending to play an early f6, knight f7, and then push with e5. So here we should react with knight to f3. And again, once more, after bishop f5, we don't trade. We just allow them to take. We just allow black to take. Our queen is coming into the game with tempo, basically. We just recapture, we bring the queen up. Bishop g7, and now again, rook to e1. We actually transpose here. Basically transposition, the only difference is the knight is on h6, not on f6. So the same idea remains. We want to make use of the e5 square, and eventually we want to swing a rook over. Right now it's not possible because the knight from f5 is controlling e3, but in the future, after we kick the knight from f5, this should be our plan. Our plan should be to attack on the h-file. Rook e3, rook h3, knight f3, knight g5, and maybe queen over somehow. Queen g3, queen h4, checkmate. But of course we have to restrict black's counterplay on the flank as well. But again, I'm not going to get too deeply into the variations. We still have other openings to talk about tonight. Just remember this, against the Caro-Kann, if you want to play a solid system, just play e4, c6, d4, d5, and now just take. Take, develop the bishop, develop the bishop, and just go for normal development, c3, knight f3, short castles, knight bd2, rook e1, so on and so forth. Okay, that's it for the Caro-Kann. Personally, I play many systems against the Caro, but I do not recommend that you go for the advance. The advance is very theoretically heavy, and you have to learn theory against both bishop f5 and against c5. So these lines can get quite complicated if you are not so experienced playing against the Caro-Kann with white. So that's why I recommend the simple line with taken. Alright, so next one on the list is the French defense. Personally, this is my favorite defense to face with the white pieces. I love when my opponents play e6 on the first move. I'm just thrilled. When I see this move on the board, I kind of just rub my hands like a little hamster and I go, yes, 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 we are going to do this. We play d4, of course, we take the center. It's good to take the center against the French defense, and they're going to play d5. Here, of course, there exist many moves. Probably the most solid one at the Grandmaster level is knight to c3, the one that's objectively trying for an advantage against the French. But here you do have to contend with the possibility of bishop b4, as well as the move knight to f6, as well as the move d takes e4. So these are already three main moves that black can throw at you. So I'm not going to recommend that we play knight to c3. I do not agree, Moin. I do not agree that pawn of attack is hard to face. I think the pawn of attack can be easily diffused with black. So I definitely do not hold the same opinion. I think the pawn of attack, if black knows even like 9 or 10 moves of theory, they're just completely fine. So I'm also not going to recommend the move e5, which avoids the Rubinstein, avoids d takes e4. But what I'm going to recommend is the Tarrasch, which starts with the move knight to d2. And this does two things very well. It reinforces the pawn on e4, develops a minor piece, and it prevents the winnower. If they play bishop to b4 here, you can just play c3, which gains the tempo. So what has black done? Nothing. So there are two main lines here. Knight to f6 is the so-called closed Tarrasch. Why is it called a closed Tarrasch? Because we can close the center with tempo. So here I recommend that after knight f to d7, we play bishop to d3. Nice to bring the bishop to the most active diagonal on the board. And then reinforce our center. c5, we want to reinforce the pawn with another pawn. And after knight to c6, I recommend that we protect the center with a move knight to e2. Oh, Scared Lion rating with a party of 5. Thank you so much, Scared Lion. Much appreciated. Guys, this is FIDE Master Milan Yotsev, a very strong player, and you should definitely follow his channel because he's a much stronger player than me. Blue Elvis gifting a tier 1 sub. Oh my goodness, to Cecile. Thank you so much, Blue Elvis. Dude, thanks so much, much appreciated. Shout out to Blue Elvis. Mods, are we here, mods? Do we have mods in the chat? Let me give the shout outs. So, first of all, shout out to Scared Lion. Hope you had a nice stream. And then shout out to my friend from down under, Blue Elvis. Not under the board, but rather in Australia. That's what down under means. Don't get inappropriate, chat. Don't get your filthy mind take over. Hello, Zavalianets. Hello, long time no see. How is Neil Slayer doing today? The Neil Slayer is doing absolutely fine. Had a wonderful day. Played some table tennis in the morning, doing some chess in the evening. Just a regular day at the office of the Impaler. So, personally, I play the move knight gf3 in OTB chess. I do not recommend this move to improving players, however. The lines can get very complicated. I recommend that you protect the center at all costs. So you go knight to e2 first, protecting the d4 pawn, and the other knight comes to f3 and protects the same pawn. So here the main line is cd4, cd4, and now I think f6 is the main move. So in the Tarrasch, whenever you see the move f6, your instant reaction should be to take. You don't want to allow black to take on e5 and open the f file and lead to some complications. Your instant reaction should be, you play f6, I take. And just let black figure out how to recapture. We don't care. Let's say they recapture with a knight. Now we bring this other knight out to f3. Look at how solid our center is. Look at the two knights reinforcing the d4 pawn. Look at this bishop being a monster on this diagonal. This bishop can come to g5. We can castle short. Hey Vlad, what's that disgusting opening? This is the French defense. I love playing against the French defense. There's nothing that I enjoy more than playing against the French defense. So let's say they capture with the queen here. What happens if they capture with the queen? Guess what? Same idea. We just reinforce our center. We want to reinforce this strong pawn. We want to restrict the e5 break. Also, notice that if black ever gets e5 in, normally we want to react by taking and then installing a knight on d4, blockading the isolated queen's pawn. Almost as terrible as Benoni. I disagree. I think the French defense is significantly worse than the Benoni. But this is just my opinion. Chat doesn't have to agree with me. My opinion is that the French defense is a lot worse than the Benoni. Also, Danny, I can beat you with both the French and the Benoni, so I don't know, man. I don't know what to say about that. Hope you had a nice stream earlier today, Danny. Hope the charity work was successful. Real Animaster saying I'll be leaving early to stream, so here's a small compensation. Thank you so much for paying the daily tax at least twice, from what I can see. You just cannot beat me in Modern. I can beat you in any opening. Don't worry. My score against you is 8-1, and the only time you won was in the blindfold, I think, right? So yeah, a Real Animaster just spamming the daily tax redemption. Thank you so much, buddy. 2-8. My bad. It's 2-8. It's not 8-1. It's you actually got 2 of me. You got a blindfold win and another win. See ya, Real Animaster. Take it easy. Have a nice evening. So what do we do after queen to b6? You know it. We reinforce the center. What do we do after f6? You know it, you always capture. And this is just very nice position indeed. Short castles, bishop d6, and here you can play a number of different moves. Personally, I like the move rook to e1 here. Just getting ready to maybe just play b3 or even a3 b4. a3 b4 is an interesting plan, intending to put the bishop on g5 and the rook on c1. So yeah, this is the idea. We don't want to develop the bishop and leave the b2 pawn hanging. That's why a3 b4 can be a strong plan, followed by bishop g5. Yeah, well, this is why I don't recommend the French defense. Look at the bishop on c8. What the hell is the bishop doing on c8? Such a bad piece. So the main idea of the closed Tarrasch is that you push the pawn to e5, gaining the tempo. Then you put the bishop on the best diagonal. You might have some Greek gift sacrifices ideas on h7. And you want to reinforce the center with your pawn, and you want to use the two knights on e2 and f3. This should be very simple to remember. This really should be very simple to remember, no matter what your level in chess is. This type of gameplay should be kind of straightforward to understand. This is the idea behind this repertoire. We want to make the repertoire very solid. I play French by misclick. Yeah, that's how I play French sometimes. I play French by misclicking the e-pawn. Yeah, so this should be straightforward, but let's go. Danny, I thought you admitted to me in DMs that you are afraid of playing the Benoni adoption match because the difference in levels between the two of us is too great. Now, why are you trying to show both in chat? This is what I do not understand. Because it's quite easy for me to adopt you, no matter what openings we play. And this is just a fact. Okay, let's not get derailed here. Let's not get derailed. So there's the so-called open Tarrasch that starts with the move c5. Objectively, the move c5 is better for black than the move knight to f6. And it's also the move that you are likely to face more often after you play knight to d2. Do you have any predictions for the big football game today, Slovenia, Croatia? Well, technically speaking, Croatia should be the favorite to win. I mean, they just have stronger team objectively. But I don't know. That's why they play the game, because we don't know the result ahead of time, right? So I'm not rooting for any particular team. I hope the game is going to be a good one. Be careful what you answer. Yeah, I mean, hopefully I passed the test. So after c5, oops. Hint, Croatia has wrong answer. Well, Croatia has the stronger team, so they're the favorites to win. Are they going to win? Not sure. Okay, so after the move c5, we have to take on d5. If we don't take on d5, our pawn structure might get ruined. So first we take on d5. If queen takes, first we develop the horsey. We develop the horsey to f3. Well, yeah, of course, Danny, I counted all the games that we played, including the blindfold game. I mean, the blindfold game shouldn't count, right? That's huge odds. Real score is 1-4. All right, I'll take that. C takes d4, and now we develop the bishop with tempo. This is a very nice move, bringing the bishop out to a good square, hitting the queen. Just a nice development. And notice that we're not scared about being a pawn down. So you might ask, okay, what the hell is this? Why are we down a pawn? Why can't they just play e5 and reinforce the pawn? Well, let me tell you why. They cannot play e5 because they're not castled. So there's an accident waiting to happen on the e-file. Exactly, drunk chess. Yeah, Danny, I can adopt you. Do you want to go? We can play 3-0, we can play 1-0 tonight after the lecture is over. I can prove to everybody watching that I can adopt you. If I can adopt you on stream, I can probably double adopt you off stream, right? Because on stream I have some lag. Okay, so the move e5 cannot be considered for black. They can never really defend this pawn. So after a move like knight to c6, we go knight to b3, intending to regain the pawn next. Aha, charity tournament now. That, I read scared. I think that means I am scared, written in capital letters. But I'm just trolling, so don't mind me. Okay, so knight b3, we're just going to regain this pawn next. We take, with which knight do we take? With which knight do we have to take? Well, this knight on b3 is kind of misplaced. It's not doing a great job of protecting the king side, yeah? So it's kind of blocking the square for the bishop. Of course, we have to capture with this knight. Normally knight takes. And now we don't want to trade queens. We don't want to trade queens. This would be a mistake. Black will be very happy to transition into the endgame, where the chances are about equal. We want to keep the queens on the board. Knight takes. A very important move, a6. If they don't play a6, there might be some accident with the square b5. So a6 is a very important move here. Now we simply go rook to e1. Look at how natural our play is. So all the lines that I'm suggesting in this repertoire allow us to develop all our pieces. You should notice this. All our pieces are coming out. We have no problems. The bishop is coming out to either e3 or to g5 or to g5 then h4 then g3. The queen is coming to e2. Rook is coming to d1. Bishop is going to b3. Pawn is going to c3. Bishop is coming to c2. So no, I'm not afraid of b5. I'm never afraid of b5. No, b5 is never going to scare me because the bishop always wants to go to b3 and then c2 to attack h7. So a4 is a move here. a4 is definitely a move. This is possible, but I'm okay. Even if they bring the bishop out to b7, this seems okay. What about? Okay. So let's show what happens if they play like a lackadaisical move, like bishop here. Well, first of all, bishop b5 check right away doesn't necessarily spell any like trouble for black, but really it's about them trying to get a6 b5 in. So this is more like the play. Do you play Mora Gambit? No, I don't play bad open. I'm just kidding. I do not recommend the Mora Gambit. I do not recommend gambits when you're an improving player. So I don't recommend that you sacrifice pawns for any sort of attack. The Mora Gambit is objectively refuted, by the way. And if you do not believe me, there's a course on Chessable that really just refutes the Mora Gambit entirely. So I do suggest you check it out. I don't have time to go over it tonight, but the Mora Gambit should be dead. Yeah, so alright, and that is the Beethoven Ninth Symphony playing in the background, which just finished. I'm not, as I explained earlier, Zavalians, I'm not scared about this b5 because our bishop always wants to go to b3 and c2. So yeah, it just feels like white has a rock solid position with the knight on d4, the bishop on c2, rooks on e1 and d1. Then there's really no checkmate possibility on g2. So this move rook to e1 is what I recommend. Queen c7 is the main move. Bishop b3, bishop d6, and now knight to f5. This is, but I'm not going to teach you this line. This is very tricky. You don't have to play like this. You really don't have to play like this. You can even start with bishop to b3 if you want. And then after something like queen to c7, you can just go for something like queen f3. And now b5 is not possible because the rook is hanging in the corner. Somebody would be so angry by that answer. Who? Mark Esserman? Well, I'm 4-0 against Mark online, so if he's angry that I called his Mora Gambit bad, he can cash me outside and we're gonna figure it out. So, yeah. I don't find the Mora Gambit good at all, at any level. I think it's bad if you're 1000, I think it's bad if you're 2000, and I think it's terrible if you are 2800. So you can clip and ship to Mark. He will be happy to hear my feelings about the Mora Gambit. Okay. Host incoming from Chess Lions. Thank you so much for the host, Danny. So this is the plan in the open Tarash, guys. The plan in the open Tarash is that we regain our pawn on d4, we bring the rooks to the center of the board, we put the bishop on b3, play c3, bring the bishop to c2, and then start attacking on the light squares. Once more, I'm not going to get too deeply into these lines. The repertoire is designed for people under 1800. Do you play versus me in Mora? Absolutely. Just let me finish. Let me finish the repertoire for tonight that I have prepared, and I can play you in the Mora and show you why it's a really bad opening. I will take this challenge. Also, we have to look at the move e takes d5 here. This is also an option. It's a bit inferior compared to queen d5 because normally black gets an isolated queen's pawn. So let's say knight gf3, knight to c6, and now I play bishop b5. The point of bishop b5 is just kind of tickle black and see how they want to develop. Basically what happens is they move the bishop once, and now once the bishop has moved once from f8, we're gonna make them lose a tempo. We are going to capture on c5, forcing them to recapture, and now we go short castles. And look at this. Our knight is coming to b3 next with tempo. We still have the move rook e1 check on the board, and we have a strong blockading square on d4 against the isolated queen's pawn. This position will favor white. More often than not, once you get a knight to d4 and blockade the isolated pawn, your plan is to trade all the pieces and win the endgame. So I would say here we can just stop. Like here we can just stop analyzing, white is just better. So after a move like knight to e7, knight to b3, bishop to d6, rook to e1, white is just slightly better. Just let's say castles, bishop g5, bishop g4, and now even bishop e2 back. This works. This works. The position is good for white because we have a strong blockading square against the isolated queen's pawn. So that's it for the Tarrasch, guys. Of course, feel free to rewatch this lecture, whatever you want to call it, at your own leisure after the stream is over. And I'm also going to post this on my YouTube channel. Yes, we do have YouTube. That exists. So here's the link in the chat. Okay. So what's the next one? Next one we're going to talk about is the Pirc or the modern. It really doesn't matter. Sometimes they transpose. So against the Pirc defense, starting with d6, I recommend that we take the center. So we play d4. And then after knight to f6, we reinforce the center by developing the knight. Very normal move. Knight to c3 main move. And now after g6, I recommend that we don't play very theoretically. I recommend that we play very positionally, very slowly. So the first step of playing the fianchetto system against the Pirc is to play pawn to g3, and after bishop g7, bishop g2, short castles. Our knight is not going to develop to the most normal square, to the most natural square f3. Our knight is going to post itself on e2. Thank you, Zavalian. At least I'm trying to pronounce the names of the openings correctly. So knight g to e2. What's the idea of this move? Why do we play the knight to e2 and we don't play it to f3? Well, we want to start an attack later with the pawn. We don't want to block the f-pawn with the knight on f3. So this is the entire point. We want the two horses to reinforce each other. We want to castle and then have free room to push with the f-pawn. I have to remind you of one other positional idea in the Pirc. We want to meet in this system. We want to meet any move that can prepare b5. This should be met with the immediate a4. So if at any point black hints at playing the freeing move b5 on the queen side, we should spend one tempo on playing a4 and restricting this idea. This is very important. This makes our bishop on g2 very strong, especially in the endgame. So the pawn on a4 is really preventing them from playing b5. And then their development becomes a bit awkward. So in the future, we might want to ram the pawn up the board and create some weaknesses on the long diagonal. So this is very important. c6 should be reacted to with a4. Similarly, a6, if you see the move a6, hello Ilas, hello, good evening to you. The move a6 should be responded to with the move a4 once more. Same idea. Whenever black wants to play b5, you spend one tempo to prevent it with a4. Very important idea. Main move here is e5, however. And here, of course, we should castle. Castling is normal. And after knight to c6, we don't want to release the tension. Any exchange of pawns in the center favors the side with more space. Right now, we are the side with more space because we have two pawns on e4 and d4. Meanwhile, black only has pawns on e5 and d6. If they trade this pawn, that means we're going to have more space. So we just ignore this. We completely ignore this possibility of a trade. We don't want to push d5. d5 looks attractive, but after knight to e7, let's say h3, there's the move knight to e8. Already, black is ready to strike back in the center with f5. So I do not recommend that we play into this type of pawn structure, especially because our attack on the queen side is very slow. We don't have the pawn on c4 yet. So this is not a great structural choice for us. Instead, I recommend we play the move h3, preventing bishop g4. And now after a move like rook to e8, here we can close the center. Here the difference is that black has spent one move taking the rook away from its best square to reinforce f5. So you see the subtle difference? Now closing the center is fine because black is going to have to play the rook back to f8 and then play f5 in most lines. So here it is fine, but even still, my preference in these systems is to just keep the tension in the center. Debmate, playing a classical match in some minutes, so I kind of just lurk. That's fine, Debmate. Congratulations for playing so many classical games online. That's something we are not really able to do on this channel, or at least not as much as I would like to. Thanks for the new follow. So here I recommend that we just keep the tension. Just normally develop the bishop to e3. And by the way, this is one of the reasons we play the move h3. So the move h3 is twofold. One, to prevent the bishop from coming to g4, and then to reinforce the square e3 for our bishop. So the knight cannot come to g4 and attack our bishop. Yeah, so here, let's say, as I said, rook e8, bishop to e3, e takes d4, and of course we have to capture back with the horsey. And this position is very, very nice. I mean, look at it. All our minor pieces are developed on beautiful squares. Our queen is coming to d2, our rooks are coming to d1 and to e1. Again, no problems for white. Really no problems. And you can say, okay, but black also has plans, black is not worse. I agree. Let me fire up the engine and ask the engine how much the evaluation of this position is. So the engine says plus 0.4, just a solid plus 0.4, plus 0.5. If you let it run at a higher depth, it's probably about 0.3. But still, very nice position. Plan is very simple. We want to advance the f-pawn sooner or later and either push for e5 or f5, just trying to get an attack going. But not yet. First, whenever we're talking about attacking, we have to remember, first we want to develop the pieces. So again, after a move like a6, we want to always react with a4. If black is threatening to play b5, always react with a4. Very important point in the system. Let's play knight b4, queen d2, c5, and now there's a question of where to put the knight. Personally, in these structures, I'd like to put the knight on e2, for it to go to g3, after g4, knight g3, and then pawn to g5. This is my idea of an attack. So I would opt for the move knight d to e2, but of course you can play knight to b3, which is equally valid. But already we're getting a bit too deep into the theory. Just remember how we play against this Peert's defense. We want to fianchetto our light squared bishop. We want to bring the knight over to e2. We want to always prevent b5 by playing a4. So if black is threatening to push b5, we want to play a4. And if they go for normal development, we simply want to castle. We have to play h3, then we put the bishop on e3. Then the queen is coming to d2 and the rooks are coming to the center of the board. So that's all you have to remember. You're going to get a playable position almost every single time. Let's show the same type of system against the modern defense. The modern defense has a lot of transpositional value, so sometimes the positions are going to feel very similar. Again, we play knight to c3, and after a move like c6, here maybe it's a bit too early to play a4. Because b5 is really not a threat right now. They haven't really placed any pawn in the center, so I would say don't waste your time. Don't waste your time playing a4 yet. But do go for the same idea of g3. And then if they play d5, a very thematic position, I recommend that we just push past. So here I just recommend that we push past. This is the so-called Caro. This is the so-called Caro-Peert's hybrid. Normally they want to play f6. But I don't believe in this way of playing. I really don't believe in this way of playing for black. Black is really going to get creamed on the king side. Again, we're just going to fianchetto. So you see the idea. The idea is pretty much the same. We want to play g3, bishop g2, advance the pawns in the center, bring the knight over to e2 and just castle. So let's say they go for something more restrained. Let's say they go for this move. Then we go bishop g2. And now after knight to f6, I think now that black is developing some pieces and we're transposing back from the modern into the Peert's, it's time to play a4. Hello, Pixie, welcome, welcome. Good to see you tonight. So I think now that black is developing some pieces, time to play a4 and just restrict b5. And guess what? We have transposed back into the same systems. So this is all you need to know. If they go something like d6 first, again, we also go g3. And now if they go for the move a6, which has been popularized by Swedish Grandmaster Tiger Hillarp Persson, if they go for a6, I recommend that we go for a4. Just kind of stopping their counterplay ideas. So they cannot go b5, they will usually go b6. Now go bishop g2, bishop b7, and the game pretty much takes the same nature as before. Just develop the knights to c3 and e2, develop the bishops to g2 and e3, castle short, queen to d2, rooks to the center of the board, and that's all she wrote. Okay, so we have two more systems to talk about, and then I'm going to end tonight's lecture. The next two openings that I want to cover are the Scandinavian and the Alekhine, or the Aljechin. So against the Scandinavian, I recommend that we take the juicer. And no matter what black does, black can either capture with a queen, or black can play knight to f6. No matter what they do, I recommend that we play the same move, and that is knight to f3. It looks strange, I know. I'm fully aware. It looks like we're just giving back the pawn without even trying to keep it. That's true, because we don't want to go for this type of gambit line. We don't want to go for this. Here black has a very strong initiative. Black has two knights out. We have a huge hole on d4. This is not the way to play chess. The way to play chess is to develop pieces, not to take pawns. Crooked Egg, thank you so much for redeeming the daily tax. So let's show the sample line. E takes d5, queen takes d5, and now we go knight to f3. Why do we go knight f3? Why don't we play the normal move knight to c3? We have a plan. We have an idea in mind. And the idea is to create this really nice pawn center, classical pawn center with pawns on d4 and c4. So that is the entire idea of the move knight to f3. And really there's no theory here. I mean, there's a bit of theory. Let's say after bishop g4, we should break the pin with bishop to e2. And after knight to c6, we're not scared. Black is going to castle long in this line, but we're not scared. We go d4. They go long castle. We go c4, attacking the queen. And after queen to f5, we should reinforce the center. They're already threatening to take once here and take here. So we should really protect the d4 pawn. And we do it by going bishop to e3. And, well, there is a bit of theory here. I do suggest that you check this theory out, actually. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but there is some long line here, starting with bishop f3, knight d4, bishop d4. It looks like black just sacrificed a piece. But queen to e6, bishop to e2, and now queen to e4. So there's no way for us to protect the bishop on d4, and there's a pin. So we cannot move it because we're going to lose the queen. So I think this is kind of funny that black is regaining the piece like this. But don't worry. Don't worry. This is a decent position for us still. We're simply not going to trade queens. We're not going to trade queens. Our bishop is coming to f3, and we're just going to bring the knight out to c3, then b5, and just attack on the queen side. So do check out this bit of theory, though. You need to be a bit prepared in this particular line. If they do anything else, if they go for normal development, a lot of players will just go knight f6 here. We go d4. A lot of players will play e6. We can either, well, I would actually suggest that we start with c4, but if you want to go more solid, you can just castle. Let's say bishop e7, and now c4. So look at this, look at the pawn center. How is black going to fight against this? They're going to have to restrict it with c6, and only then attack it. Oops, not queen d7, but rather queen to d8. Queen d8, and we have a nice plan. Queen to b3 already comes with tempo, attacking the pawn. Say queen c8, knight c3, all the pieces are coming out. You will notice that in the repertoire that I'm suggesting tonight, white never has any problems developing the pieces. And this is the most important thing. It's not necessarily important for you to win out of the opening, but it's important for you as an improving player. If you're between, let's say, 1200 and 1800, it's important for you to learn good chess. Play good chess, play principled chess, get all your pieces out, and only then start attacking. So this is what I'm trying to reinforce here. Good chess. Let's say knight c3, short castles, and you can try hunting the bishop. You can try asking the bishop some questions, or you could even continue your development with stuff like bishop g5. This is all normal. Rooks are coming to d1 and e1 as usual. Main move is knight c3, absolutely. The main move is knight to c3, but I'm recommending knight to f3. I believe knight to f3 is a much better move, actually. I think knight to f3 at the grandmaster level scores much better even. So I'm going to read off some stats here. Knight f3 wins 41% for white and wins 21% for black. Knight c3, 38% for white, 24% for black. Same number of draws. So a 3% swing in the win percentage at the master level is very statistically significant. So against the Scandinavian, just remember this. Knight f3, bishop e2, d4, c4, short castles, knight c3, bishop somewhere, queen somewhere, rooks to the middle. You're better. That's it. Like, I'm not even going to talk too much about the Scandinavian. It's so easy to get an advantage against it. So yeah, that's it. No more Scandinavian talk. Same idea. If they go for knight f6, you don't care. You just give up this pawn. Just don't care about it. Let them take it. Let them take it. You play d4. Let's say they play g6. You could start with bishop. Let's start with bishop e2, bishop g7, short castles, pawn c4, knight b6, knight c3. You don't care. You really don't care what black is doing here. After knight to c6, you can even play d5. Yeah, exactly. White is very harmonious. That's what I'm trying to get at. White is very harmonious if you delay the development of the b1 knight. So first you start with the kingside knight because you want to castle here. It makes sense positionally. It makes a lot of sense to develop the pieces on the king side first, then put your king to safety, and only then start pushing in the center and on the queen side. Yeah, so I think white is very harmonious, and the last opening that I'm going to cover tonight is the Alekhine or Alekhine defense. And anything else I'm not going to pay any attention to. I'm not going to cover b6. b6 is too rare. Just play based on principles and you're going to have a good position. And I'm not going to cover bad openings like a6 or h6. So after knight to f6, we want to gain this tempo on the knight. And then we want to build up a nice pawn chain in the center. Usually black will play d6, trying to challenge you in the center. And the move that I recommend is c4. Just try to gain this tempo. I'm not going to recommend that we play f4 next though. So here after knight to b6, there's a move f4. This is a bit loose. I don't like to play loose openings. I like to play harmonious openings. So we are going to transpose into a similar structure that I showed on the previous chapter in the Scandinavian. We're going to take. We are voluntarily giving away this pawn, trading the pawn that we got all the way to e5. Just kind of admitting that our center is just strong enough already with pawns on c4 and d4. There are two main ways to recapture here. Queen captures is not possible because of c5 winning a piece. Well, not winning a piece outright, but well, how can you defend black's position here? What is the queen doing on e6? What is the knight doing on d5? And all the other pieces are basically blocked. So queen takes d6 is not an option. After c takes, we bring the knight to c3, and now this diagonal is completely blocked, so black has to do something about the bishop. Therefore, they're going to develop it to g7. We reinforce the center with bishop e3. Black will develop the bishop, and now we play rook c1. Here in this line, it's very important that we prioritize queenside development. Let me explain to you why. Let's count the pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's count the pawns on the other side. 1, 2, 3. So it is very important to get our queenside counterplay started before black gets a chance to put her king to safety and advance the kingside pawns. So this is the idea. We prioritize the development on this side of the board because we have the local superiority. We have more soldiers. Our army is stronger on this side. b3. And here the main move is e5. And after e5, I recommend that we just trade the queens and push c5. So this is indeed a good way to play, because now look at the endgame advantage. In the endgame, we have a 3 against 2 on the queen side, and we can create a passed pawn on the c file at some point. I think the main move here is knight 6 to d7. Not this. This could be a blunder. This could be a blunder, because we even have bishop c4 here. And there's no good way to reinforce this piece, guys. The piece is lost. The exchange is lost. Well, maybe more than that. Here, this is just mate. Look at this. This is going to be mate. Well, you can do this, but I'm gonna take your rook. So this is not so great. Yeah, so that's why the move here is knight 6 to d7, and we just continue with the development. Isn't Alekhine a bad opening? I have never faced it OTB. Yeah, in OTB, I guess it's not the greatest opening ever. But in speed chess, it's playable. Which line was it? This was the c takes d6 line. This was the c takes d6. Of course, black has the option to recapture symmetrically. Black has the option to capture the e-pawn. And now we don't have the superiority on the queen side anymore. So we should gravitate towards developing like both sides equally. Yeah, e takes d6 is more solid, I agree. This is more solid. Knight c3, bishop e7, and now I recommend the move bishop to d3, just putting the bishop on this nice diagonal. And after the main move, knight to c6, we don't want to put the knight on f3, guys. Very importantly, if we put the knight on f3, they can pin it, and this pawn is suffering from some weakness. We want to go knight g2. You should be familiar with this way of playing the knights to c3 and to e2, because I have shown it in at least 2 of the previous systems. I have shown this in the Vienna against 1e5, and I have shown this I have shown this in the lines against Peertz and Modern. So this should be familiar to you. And here we play Ben Feingold's favorite move. We play f3. We want to break the pin. Why is it okay to play f3 here? It's okay to play f3 because our bishop is going to fit in very nicely on this square. So the bishop is going to come all the way to f2. Say bishop h5, short castles, let's say, I don't know, bishop g6. Normally here I just let them take. So I think I just go here normally. Yeah, I just go to e3, take, short castle. There is the move knight here though. There's the move knight b4, but after queen to b1, this should lead to some complications. This should lead to some complications that favor white, in my opinion. But okay, you don't need to learn all this theory. All this theory you don't need to learn. Of course, after bishop to g6, if you want to keep it simple, you can just trade, or you can just reinforce your c4 pawn by the move b3. And this is all safe. Again, look at our pieces. Our pieces are coming out nicely. You're going to have no problems in the development. The rooks are coming over to e1 and d1. Queen is coming to c2 or d2. White is just better. So that's pretty much it, guys. I know the treatment was not very advanced, but I was just trying to show you how to gain a respectable middle game position in the e4 openings. All the e4 openings have been covered, with the exception of the really bad ones. So the really bad ones are stuff like h6 or like a6. a6 might actually even be playable, but come on. How to respond to a6? Hopefully you don't need to be a genius to understand that we just take the center and that we just play normal moves. So like this should be 7. I don't even want to talk about this. This opening is just so passive for black. Alexander Alekhine very rarely played the Alekhine defense, in fact. He only played it like once or twice in his life. So, yeah. I had somebody earlier here challenging me to a game in the Mora Gambit. Is Nazari Moin still in the chat? If you're here, please do challenge me to a, I don't know, 3+0 game should work. And I'm going to prove to you why the Mora Gambit is unplayable. I'm going to obtain a crushing advantage by move 15. So you can challenge me here. Oops, wait, I don't have the link on? Crap. Just give me a second. I disabled the command for challenge. Just give me a second, and I'm going to accept your challenge afterwards. My Lichess ID is VladG92. You can challenge me at VladG92. If you're a low-rated player like me, our Gambit's good for getting better at tactics. No, I don't think so. I think you should play principled chess no matter what your level is. 3+2? I prefer 3+0, but you can challenge 3+2. Why not? You can challenge 3+2. I'm not going to be bothered by it. So go ahead. Let's show why the Mora Gambit is not so good. Blame Gotham chess for what? For e6, b6 getting more popular? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. We can also blame Eric Rosen for making the Stafford, which is objectively a very bad opening, popular. But it's okay, people are going to learn the refutations. And Senior Trader is challenging me. Pretty good player. I mean, rating is respectable. So let us transition to the new scene here. And make sure the layout looks nice. Yep. So we can pre-move this entire sequence here. So basically we are up a pawn, and now we just have to consolidate this pawn. We go a6, then we go knight f6, then we go bishop g4, and we are up a pawn. Now we just develop very normally. We go e6, bishop e7. There's no threat of e5 yet. Whenever the threat of e5 exists, we have to put a queen to b8. So right now black is up a pawn and white has no compensation, but we do have to consolidate a bit. So first we castle, and now we go queen to b8 just to not allow this trick with e5. The e5 trick is really the only one that they have. Let me think. Probably rook to d8 seems solid enough. Now we can even play the move knight to e5. Kind of damage our own pawn structure. This is playable. Can I go b5 right away? Probably not. Cannot go b5, so let's go b6. The idea is to just bring the queen up to b7 and bring the rook over to c8. So we go queen b7. Yeah, and in this position, the knight is coming very nicely to a5 next, the rook is coming to c8, and the position should be close to winning. It's very likely that I'm going to lose this game, but it's definitely not going to be due to the opening. So what I'm trying to say is, you might win games with the Mora. That could happen. It could happen that you win games playing this opening. But even if white wins this game, it's not going to be due to the opening itself. So what prevents me from just taking here? And now maybe just put my... Where do I put my horsey? Put my horsey here. Seems like a nice square for the horsey. Now the horsey is very stable. And I'm actually sacrificing a pawn. He didn't take it though. He did not take the pawn. It's interesting. I was sure he was going to take this pawn. Alright, let's go here. That I didn't see. Oh well. That I simply did not see. Alright, I'm just gonna go here. Just gonna go h5 to prevent h4. Yeah, I mean, of course, that I kind of misplayed there a bit. Yeah, I'm just lost here. Good game. Yeah, so of course the game was finally won by white. I'm blundering on the pin, but this was not due to the opening. The opening position is just crushing for black. So good game, Mr. Nazari. Yeah, this is minus point. This is minus 0.5, minus 0.7 already. So against the Mora, all you have to know is to play a6 before knight f6. So you play d6, then you play a6, then you play knight f6, bishop g4, e6, bishop e7, castle, and you're up a pawn. Yeah, I mean, a6 I just blundered. a6 I just blundered, GG. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why I blundered this a pawn. I actually thought that white was going to take here. But yeah, because I actually this pawn I sacrificed. I knew I was sacrificing the pawn here, but a6 I didn't see. Bishop f4, then queen e2. No, I don't think bishop f4. I think bishop f4 is what Mark Esserman recommends, right? Or does he recommend bishop g5? I don't think bishop f4 is better. Bishop f4 scores horribly. Bishop f4 scores really horribly for white, so I don't think it's a good move. In any case, the Mora gambit should not be played at any level, and well, if you choose to play it, that's on you. But if black really knows what they're doing, they can obtain a crushing advantage after about 12 to 14 moves. Opening prep doesn't matter if you don't study tactics. Yeah, that's exactly what I reinforce. I know Mark Esserman wrote a book on the Mora, but his prep is outdated and the opening is fully refuted. There's a Chessable course that refutes the Mora. Alright, I'm gonna change back to the just chatting scene and just gonna chat with you guys for a bit. Let's see what chat is saying. Where is everybody? Bright Frayne is here with us. Bright Frayne, how's it going? Levy also has a course for e4 players, and he suggests Vienna against e5. That's good. Oh, of course. I mean, I agree. I agree that the Mora is good for blitz. I'm just saying, I guess I was talking more about like OTV chess. I agree. Mora is a great weapon for blitz. If your opponent doesn't know what they're doing, props to you, man. You can just outplay them very fast. You can just beat them. If Alan 8013, don't know if the King's Gambit and Evans Gambit was good enough for Morphy. No, the King's Gambit is just not playable. The King's Gambit is absolutely like not playable in long time controls, I mean. So if you play the King's Gambit in long time control, you're asking for trouble. It's okay if that's your style. If your style is asking for trouble, then go ahead and play the King's Gambit. The Evans Gambit, on the other hand, could be playable, even at slower time controls. Bright Frayne saying, good, getting my life together. Not a lot of time for chess. Okay. If engine says equal in the opening, I'll usually want to play the side with the pawn down. I can understand this. I can understand that. Except in the Mora, in the line that I played, the engine almost never gives white equality. It's almost always like minus 0.5. So I would take the side with the extra pawn. I mean, playing against if I play the Sicilian and my opponent plays the Mora, that's my favorite thing to face with black. So I'm a bit more upset if they play the closed Sicilian, the Grand Prix attack, or the Alpin with c3. So those three actually bother me a lot more than the Mora. Because in those three, you actually need to know some significantly more prep. What about the late Evans, which Dubov played against Karyakin? I only remember that game for the move queen takes g6, or was it queen takes g6? Yeah, I only remember that game because of the tactics, not because of the opening, so I wouldn't be able to comment much on the opening they played in the game. I like the Mora, but in serious classical game versus prepped opponent, I probably don't play it. Exactly. So the Mora is a good opening for short time controls like Bullet or Blitz. Definitely go ahead and play it if you like attacking chess. But in serious OTB games, I don't think it's a valid option. Do you mean mop up the Mora course? Not sure what the name is, but that sounds about right. Yeah. That sounds about right. Hello, player unknown. Thanks for paying the tax today. There's a dude who wrote a book in it. I think that's Mark Esserman. Yeah, let me catch up with the chat earlier. I think I caught up with the chat now. Yay. Hat on, hat off. Okay. It's not enough that I'm overheating here. You guys want me to put a hat on? Just give me a sec. Hello, Stefan. Hello, good to see you. Yeah, so what I was saying, yeah, I was kind of overheating and chat wanted me to... Why am I overheating? Because it's really warm in my apartment, I don't know. I'm wearing too many layers, I suppose. That's the only reason I'm overheating. Also chess. Chess makes my brain overheat sometimes. So if you're joining us late tonight, now look like London Vlad. That's right, Peaky Blinders. Yeah, if you guys like this TV show, Peaky Blinders, this is where I derived some of my inspiration from. So if you're late to the broadcast tonight, I'm going to end the stream fairly soon, but you can always watch the VOD. I went through some openings. So I went through some openings for white, starting with one e4. Player announcing, I'm an honorable citizen and lawful and respectable taxpayer in your country, called the Vlad Impalers, lol. If it is randomly warm in your apartment in the Netherlands, this means your neighbors have a special greenhouse, lol. The one where they grow certain plants, yeah? Yeah, makes sense. No, here, I guess, well, I guess it's just warm inside the apartment. I wouldn't read too much into it. It doesn't happen every day. How long do you think it would take to go from 1400 rating to 2000 rating on Lee Chess? I guess it really depends on your time investment. How much time are you willing to dedicate to playing chess or studying the game? Going from 1400 to 2000 could be easy for some, could be harder for others. It's really hard to say without knowing your specific situation. Good to see you, Recluse, by the way. 2-3 hours per day. 2-3 hours per day of playing the game or studying the game. Very important. I think usually a mix of studying and playing leads to the maximum benefits. So if you're just playing games for 2-3 hours a day, it's going to take a while to get up 600 points. If you're studying and also playing at the same time, that should make it easier. Lincoln Automata, thank you so much for the follow and welcome to the stream. Yeah, so let's say you study for, I don't know, 1 hour and a half and you play for another hour and a half. I would say it should take you like a year and a half. I think a year and a half to 2 years is what I would expect if we're talking about blitz or rapid rating. Took me about 2 months. Okay, that is quite special. That is quite special if you got from 1400 to 2000 in 2 months. That is not that's not common. That is very uncommon, in fact. As you go up in the rating ladder, it becomes harder and harder to make a progress. Yeah, I mean, 2 months from 14 to 2000 is absolutely incredible. It also depends on the age. If I'm not mistaken, Recluse is an adult improver, so he's not a kid anymore. So that is going to make it probably a bit more difficult as well. All right, let me change the title here. Talking chess on leechess.org. Yeah, so basically this is like the just chatting portion of the stream. Also, thanks for all the follows, guys, today. So we started the stream at about 1300 something followers, and I think we're up to 1329, so that's really nice. Thank you so much, guys. Also, I have some good news, hopefully. We are in the talks with some of the Lichess moderators to get back on the front page of Lichess as a streamer. This would boost the channel a lot with viewership and with follows and subs, hopefully. So yeah, that should be part of the good news. I was on the front page of Lichess for about 2 months. Giving life advice and being a cam girl. I'm not sure I understand. Surprisingly, ratings on Lichess are higher than on chess.com. I don't think it's surprising at all. On chess.com you start at 1200, on Lichess you start at 1500. The starting point is going to lead to some, well, variance or like difference, not variance, difference in your ratings. As you go up in rating, however, Lichess and chess.com become very close. Right now my chess.com blitz rating is actually higher than my Lichess blitz rating. Vlad giving life advice and being a cam girl. Yeah, I don't think I'm being a cam girl. I don't think cam girls usually talk about chess. And certainly they don't wear as many layers of clothing that I'm wearing tonight. So, yep, you can scratch that. Not a cam girl. Hat off. Oh, thank goodness. A Vlad OnlyFans? Nah, that's not happening. Highest rating in chess.com is more than Lichess. That's exactly right. That's what I'm trying to say. It becomes easier at some point to reach 3,000. Well, easier, as easy as it can get to reach 3,000, right? It's much easier to reach 3,000 on chess.com than on Lichess. Of course, both achievements are incredibly hard, but most people who are 3,000 on chess.com are not 3,000 on Lichess. This is what I'm trying to say. Hope that makes some sense. Yeah. Senior trader said he was about 15 years old when he progressed from 1400 to 2000. That's nice. That is very nice indeed. If I had a Puzzle Racer scene prepared on the stream, I would recommend that we just play that, but I just don't really have the brain power anymore to do any Puzzle Racer tonight. So we might do this on the next stream. So the next stream is probably going to be tomorrow evening here for me in Romania. And then the next stream after that is going to be on Friday night when I'm going to play a classical game on stream. So in the meantime, let's see who is streaming right now. I am going to raid my friend Thea. Now, I do understand that she is, well, she's currently speaking Italian. Yeah, Thea is streaming in Italian. Maybe that's not the greatest idea. Hashtag chess, raid them. Yeah, we could raid hashtag chess, why not? Or we could raid my friend Danny Dimovsky, who is doing some charity stream. I'm going to raid... I think I'm going to raid hashtag tonight, guys. Yeah, I'm going to raid hashtag chess. So enjoy your stay in the hashtag channel and hope to see you on my next broadcast, which is going to be in about 24 hours from now. So, peace out, folks. And thanks for the support today. Really appreciate all the support and hope to see you soon. Don't forget to rewatch the stream if you missed the opening ideas. And yeah, hopefully that's going to be nice for you guys. Bye-bye.